Hi, welcome back to Filmonomics at Slated. I'm Steph Paterno, and for those of you who noticed, we've been on a hiatus for nearly 2 months. We were giving you time to absorb the extensive rewrite of the 4 white papers. These were a huge update from the ones done a few years ago. Our editorial director, Colin Brown, worked tirelessly on them, but we gradually released them over the last 2 months, and we now have had them well distributed with thousands of likes and disseminated to all the universities and the different institutions that we work with. And we even had the opportunity to present them at the Cannes Film Festival, where Colin and I had the pleasure of giving a keynote address to the Cannes Marché du Film's Investors Club. Some of the interesting themes that came up from the Investors Club, as well as at Cannes in general, was that despite the fact that everybody now more than ever needs movie stars to help finance and sell their films, that hasn't stopped an explosive growth in the number of films getting produced every year. We're at record highs now, and there are indeed exploding emerging markets as well. So there are consumers around the world that are going more and more to the cinema, more and more cinemas are getting built, and more films are getting produced to be put in those cinemas. So what really came out of this was a need greater than ever before to have filtering tools for people not only as a consumer to find out which films to go watch, but as producers and sales agents and distributors and financiers and talent to figure out which films to get involved with. There are so many films now to pick from that it really is trying to find a needle in a haystack. So that was a theme that came up at Cannes, and that was actually not too dissimilar from the theme that we were talking about at a Filmonomics talks that we had about 2 months ago, where we asked our panelists about, can art be quantified? Now, we had the pleasure on this panel of having Vincent Bruzzese and Chris LeBerge, who are 2 of the foremost experts on film industry analytics and the predictability of cinema. So let's hear from them on whether art can be quantified.
Yeah. Everybody can be creative. This town is filled, upstairs is 100 people with screenplays, and most of them work here. Bad screenplays, right? Everyone is, with a phone, with a camera, is creative. But how do you filter that? You're all creative, right? So how do you filter that? You all think you have the project that should be made, the work of art that people need to see. But how does someone decide that that's the one to use? Well, then it comes down to what? Salesmanship, right? It comes down to who you know and how good of a salesman you are, or a salesperson you are. Well, is that a meritocracy for art? Because the art that gets made, the movies get made, and some of them are pieces of crap, get made because someone pitched it and spun it well. Not because of the merits of the art, not because of the screenplay, because trust me, by the time that gets made into a film or a TV show, it looks nothing like what you originally wrote. Your baby has gotten plastic surgery so many times you won't recognize it. But how does it get through? So now it becomes like the justice system. It's not who's guilty or innocent, it's who can argue better, who can present it better. What we offer is something to let actual good art, actual things that the audience wants to see, shine through with a meritocracy, because never has something that we have declared this people want to see this, that they not want to see it. They not come and box office not actually follow that. And so what if you believe you have a project or something creative that, and you believe in it, that something wants to see, you should not be afraid of the process, because the only thing the process will do will prove you right. And then it will get noticed, because then you won't have to rely on your salesmanship. Now, some of you might be great salespeople and you can go out there and spin it, but a lot of you aren't, and you're not going to get the attention of someone who's going to give you the money. What we do is we make sure the people who have the money pay attention to the scripts and the projects that need to have attention paid to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think what market research helps with is knowing your audience. I think, no matter what kind of film you're making, you should always have in mind, who is this movie for? And you'll be surprised how many movies make it through the studio system, make it through the independent system. They don't know what their audience is. Even if it's just, a lot of movies these days don't need to be a 4-quadrant film. They can appeal just to younger females or just older females. Look at 50 Shades of Grey or look at The Fault in Our Stars. But what market research helps you identify is who is this target audience, and are they excited about this film? Not just who is it for, or do they actually like it? Do they respond well to the concept? Do they have an affinity for the stars? Does the director matter to them? These are all things that market research can help you do early in the process and also after the green light stage, which is a lot of what we do. And I mean, I think without it, there would be a lot of movies made today that they don't have an audience, and that we still see that happen a lot, where we'll look at a movie, we'll say, how did this get greenlit? Who is this for? And that's usually the result of a movie that wasn't tested, the concept wasn't tested. Yeah.
You know, I get it. I get the idea that data is cold and art isn't, and it's very removed from that. And the best thing I could say is what the best thing you can do is to understand it, because at some point someone's going to put a sheet full of numbers in front of you and use it against you. And the more you understand it, the more you can argue against it and use it to get your vision on the screen and get people to see it.
And as much as we hate to admit it, audiences crave the familiar. And so even for these movies that, you know, defy the normal archetype, at least to get audiences in at the beginning, you need to give them something familiar, something that they're used to seeing, some kind of entry point. And so a lot of times it's okay to kind of go off the beaten path and do something a little different, but you want to make sure your story includes something where audience members who have never been exposed to something like this before can say, oh, I can latch onto that. This reminds me of this, or I relate to this character. And so it's just giving those movies a little bit of that relatability, even if it is different. And audiences will come to it, but they need to be pulled in first with that sense of familiarity. And also, I think, as you were alluding to, I mean, quality matters more than ever now. Hundreds of reviews are on Rotten Tomatoes 2 or 3 days before a film's release. Movie tickets cost more than ever. Buying a movie ticket is no longer something that people do just because they're out. It's an investment. It's planned. And so if you're putting something out there that's radically different, you better hope that it delivers the goods and that it at least has some kind of entry point that people can look at and say, hey, you know what? I've seen that before, but I like it. It's something that I like. It reminds me of something good.
Very often artists are thinking there's a crystal ball, and just the piece of art in itself, we somehow guessed how well it was going to do. Using probability and statistics, you can actually look and see what's the likelihood this great script gets the amazing director, producer, and cast and 3,000 screens and 30 million in marketing. If it gets all of that, we know within 95% certainty. But if it doesn't get those things, that's going to be the outcome somewhere over there. So no, it's never just a piece of art and we know. We have to make hundreds of assumptions on the variables. So that's the part you guys aren't hearing that makes you think we're talking crystal ball. There's no crystal ball here. There's just statistical analysis. And it is cold, but it does not take away from the merit of the art, right? The art of how great and interesting and fresh that story is going to be. Well, put into the hands of a first-time writer, it will get fumbled all the way, usually. Put into the hands of an incredible writer, they may take a mediocre concept and turn it into something great. So, right, it comes down to how great is the team that got involved in executing that art.
Another interesting aspect was that we asked our audience at the beginning of the talks, how predictable did they feel film projections could be based on data and analysis. And overall, at the beginning, the audience felt that film could be about 50% predictable, depending on the data you had. Well, by the end of our talks, there was nearly unanimous consent that film could be far more predictable than people had thought with the right data and analytics. So clearly the audience warmed up. Now we're going to explore that theme a lot further in future episodes, but until then, please don't forget to subscribe. Until then, over and out.